Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whenever you're tuning in to this video. Siobhan and I are absolutely delighted to be sharing the screen for this, the first In Conversation With of 2024, with the amazing, the wonderful, the friend that is Fatima Whitbread. Fatima, thank you so much for joining us and kicking off 2024 with In Conversation With. We have spoken kind of tail end of last year around all of the work that APPA's doing for children in care and all of the support for professionals and parents. But what you're doing is very, very special and kind of aligns really tightly with what we're doing. So let's hear it. Let's let the people know about Fatima's UK campaign.
Hi, well, it's nice to be talking with you and seeing the face behind the name. So thank you for having me on anyway. Yeah, I guess Fatima's UK campaign is all about supporting our young children and young people in the care system sector. It's also to support and help the care system sector itself and rejuvenating and bringing about collaboration and sharing ideas across the 4 nations. And you know, as far as I see it, I mean, it's about time as well, because as much as we need our children who need hope, so does our care system, and to give them the opportunity to come together and harness the power of one voice is so important. It gives it a nationalistic feel for what truly is. An amazing group of people that we have that work for our care system sector. But unfortunately, they're sort of patchy and they spread all far and wide. It's always very difficult to as you know, with the success, it comes from the grassroots up, not from the top down. And looking at the top down, really, I mean, and we're talking to a certain extent regarding the government. Unfortunately, they've sort of kicked that same tin can down the road for quite a few years now, and it's quite despondent for a lot of the people that work within the care system sector. They feel let down, and I think it's time that we started to work together collaboratively within partnerships to bring, to make change and to bring a big difference and make a difference to our young children's lives too. So I'm using my lived experience, and which of course I was in the care system for 14 years, abandoned as a baby, some would say left to die. And, I spent then being made a ward of court by Hackney Borough Council. I spent 14 years in children's homes. So I well understand what being in children's homes mean and represents for our care system, the children that were in the care system sector and our young care leavers, and what they're going through. So as somebody who would use my lived experience and also my Olympic platform is to relate and, to emphasize with the public so we can get educate people more about what's going on within our care system sector and amplify the voices of our young people, and also to create that awareness and much bigger awareness for everybody to know and understand what these children go through, because a lot of them find themselves in the care system sector through no fault of their own. And it's of vital importance, to do away with a lot of misconceptions which have unfortunately found their way into our sector, and which are, unfounded, really, to be quite honest.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so much talent in the young people, but there's also a real resilience that comes from that experience, because, as you say, it's no fault of their own in literally 100% of those cases.
Yeah, I mean, we should be celebrating our young people for the resilience that they show, which is quite remarkable, really. And I think that in most areas of conventional families, I mean, young people today, young children, yes, of course, every child has a right to a safe and happy childhood, and we hope that continues. But for those in the care system sector, that's not always the case. So we would like to be able to celebrate their resilience, because, you know, they're actually could be a massive asset to an awful lot of people as they get older into adulthood, because they're much wiser, I think, and have had to use their initiative a lot more than they would normally have done, through the fact that they live in the care system sector, and they've experienced tremendous amount of emotional abuse, in some cases, like myself, emotional and sexual abuse. And indeed, you know, for them to have to survive the trauma, the abandonment and the neglect and the detachment issues that they go through, you know, that makes them quite very resilient, makes them very, you know, very, I guess, sought after people.
Yeah.
We're working in most workplaces, you know, which a lot of people don't have that kind of initiative like these young people do, just being streetwise and understanding, pick up on things quite easily, you know, whereas
Read
others
them
wouldn't.
really, really well. And they know the kind of routes to where they want to get to quite often a lot quicker than
Quicker.
those that haven't had that experience.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, and I'm very versed in this area myself, Fatima, because I've worked within children's homes that never even had safeguarding in
yeah,
place when I
right.
started working with them. But I've also had a very personal experience of a young man who was somebody very close to my son. And I learned so much by that child living in my house, which I
Yeah,
was more than happy for that youngster to do at the time. But I also experienced and understood more by that experience than ever anything I've had professionally, because I was within that situation on a very
yes,
personal
close to it.
basis. And I saw that child's life educationally completely destroyed. And to go through that situation, it will haunt me. I still see that youngster who's now in his 20s, but to
Yeah,
know what happened to him and how he was treated, in fact, how we were both treated for being somebody that wanted to care for a youngster who was in a clear amount of difficulty and had reported and asked for help from school, and where that situation went. I'm very proud, Fatima, to actually have
yeah,
been thrown out of council offices in relation to social services and in relation to trying to protect that particular youngster. So I have real experience of what some go through. But I wanted to ask you a question, because
mhm,
I also know that something about you is very different. And I know that you'll identify with what I'm going to say. A lot of youngsters go through this system and their lives are decimated, and
mhm,
their mind takes them down incredibly difficult routes based on the trauma that they've been through. And I've always wondered what it was about you that turned your life into being where you are now, in comparison to where we know, unfortunately, so many youngsters can end up in very different places. Fatima, what was different
yeah.
about you?
Well, I mean, for me, sport was my savior at school, and for a lot of us kids back then in the 60s, living in children's homes was quite different experience to what it is now. I mean, children's homes back then, we had 14, and my first home was 20 children, which was that's an awful lot. And I can remember as a baby, that was 0 to 5, I was in Hertfordshire, often playing in the front room, um, uh, and looking out onto the car park. And anybody that came into the car park could always say, "Is that my mummy coming to get me?" And I think the problem with children, you know, they find it very hard to process things, you know, the abandonment issues and neglect, you know, nobody really explaining anything properly to you. I mean, back then, nobody ever did. It was children should be seen and not heard. And I wasn't told that I had a mummy or I had any half brothers or sisters. And at 5, I was called by the house matron of the home. She said, "Fatima, tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, be down here. She said in the reception, she said, your mother is coming to get you with your childcare officer, and you'll be going to a new children's home to meet your half brother and sister. And that was at 5. I mean, you can imagine, you know, it's really tough to try and process things like that. It's quite traumatic. And already, like most children at 5 years old, you already have what you call trauma impacts, you know, with emotional trauma that comes into your life because of the lack of love and the security that you have in your life, and nobody explaining anything. And so I sat up most of the night wondering what's going to happen to me. This is my home, and all these children are my family. So yeah, it was quite disturbing, that thought alone. Being trapped in your head as well is another thing which young people do tend to get, and even adults, you know. You can be trapped in your own head. It's like being imprisoned, and the narrative of which you speak all the time can also be very damaging. So for me, it was I was no different as a youngster in terms of, you know, I would often sit up and worry and think what's happening to me, why am I here, what's going to, what's going to happen to me in the future. And yeah, I mean, at 5, that was a lot to deal with, but nevertheless, you know, I didn't have any visits or postcards or Christmas cards or anybody telling me that there was, to sort of signify that there was somebody special in my life, because there wasn't. And then, of course, when I sat there at 9 o'clock in the morning, and I saw a cerise colour movement behind the opaque glass door, and the matron answered the door, and a very large lady came in with a pink cerise coat with a whiff of perfume, strong perfume that came in, that followed her. And also when she was talking to the house matron, I noticed she had a gold tooth here, but she never once looked my way. And then there was this slimmer lady in a duffel coat, mousy colour hair, smiling away, chattering away and smiling at me. And I thought, oh, that must be my mummy. And the reason for that probably was because in a young child's mind, a mummy had to be somebody who was connecting with you and showing you lots of happiness and love. And this lady had a lot of warmth about her, and I naturally gravitated towards her. Well, I couldn't have been so wrong, obviously, because the large burly lady with black curly hair, she was the biological mum. And yes, as I said, she never once made any eye contact or spoke to me in the whole of the journey down to the new children's home. And when I reached the home, the house auntie came out. She said, "Now run along," she said, "go out into the garden," she said, "and play with the other children while I sort out things here." And I can remember wandering through the home and thinking it was a much smaller place to where we'd been living. We had 25 kids there, and this children's home was part of a residential, and it looked much smaller. And when I got out, there must have been about 12, 14 children out there. And then I felt this tug on my clothing, and as I looked down, this young girl was looking up to me saying, "Oh, you must be my half sister." And I sort of looked down, and as children do, I said, "Oh yeah, I must be your half sister." And with that, she pulled me over to the climbing frame, and I can remember starting to climb up the climbing frame, and then I felt this hand come across my chest, and it was like pulled towards her. She said, "You look after your sister, I cut your throat." And it was the same lady, you know, the biological mum, and that was my first words from her. And the children ran to her, and they started talking in the mother tongue. And I realized then at that stage that they knew her, and I was the stranger to them. And yeah, I didn't feel a part of that at all. And I started to fear then, why had I been taken away from everything I'd known in the children's home where I felt secure, and now brought to this place where I had no affinity with and didn't know anybody. And of course, the fear of God had just been put into me as well. So I guess, I mean, like all children, you show resilience. It's a kind of swim or sink. An inner strength started to develop within me. And I fast learned, you know, how important it was to try and connect and make friends with the other children in the home, and obviously we were in school, you know, new friends at school. But I was very fortunate. I had an auntie in this new home. One of the 72-hour ladies was called Auntie Ray. And Auntie Ray was my bright shining star, as she was with so many of the children in the children's home. And I'd always remember, I'd watch where she would come from and where she would go to. She would clip-clop down the road, and I'd stand on the staircase looking out the window, and I'd see that she lived on the end house at the end of that road. And it was quite amazing, really, the impact that she had on us children. She just got us. She understood us. We felt seen and heard. And often when Auntie Ray came on duty, I would always lay in my bed under the sheets and wait for her, because we called her the tickle monster. She'd come and wake us up and tickle us. And until she did that, my day didn't feel like it had started, really. She humanized us kids, you know, and that for me was something quite special. And I do remember one spring that I gathered a lot of daffodils around the children's home, and probably went into people's gardens where I shouldn't have done to pick those. We won't say anything. Yeah, and I went down and I knocked on the door, and I remember when she answered, I presented the flowers and I said, "Will you be my mummy?" And she said, "Oh, Fat," she said, "come on," she said, "come on round the back," she said, "let's talk about this." And I thought, oh no, I'm going to be in trouble here. But no, she sat me down. We had a cup of tea and a biscuit. And she said, "Look, Fat," she said, "I can't just be your mummy." She said, "I have to be mummy to all those children." She said, "But here's the thing," she said, I'm not always there, you are." She said, "So why don't you be there, mummy, when I'm not?" So that kind of gave me a clear indication about in giving you receive. And it taught me a very valuable lesson that in giving you do receive, because in stepping up and protecting and being a protector and a guardian for those children, in giving them the very much love and care that they needed, and I received it, and it kind of swiveled that lens from being somebody that was always trapped in my own thoughts and looking at myself. I never became, swiveling the lens allowed me to become someone who was not a victim by what I was going through, which often is the case with some of the young children. They find it hard to process. They can't get, out of the prison that they put themselves in their minds, and obviously the circumstances that they go through and the issues that they are dealing with that trap them there. And for me, I was able to swivel that lens and give the love and security to those children that came and went within our home, and that helped me too. So it taught me a lot, and and sport was my savior at school. Sport definitely taught me a lot of skills.
Yeah.
It taught me.
Sorry,
Go
I
on.
just want to say, because what that lady did, I don't know if she had any therapeutic understanding, but what she did was exactly what I do in my therapy room: help people become their own parent, to parent and learn to love themselves in
Yeah,
a
well
way
done.
that you don't get it from other people an
People.
awful lot of the time. So when I heard you say that she said, "Be your own mummy,"
Yeah,
that is what I help people learn to do. Help them reparent themselves through their own knowledge, their own
yeah,
skills, and their own love that they can give to them. So a very powerful thing to actually say to you, because you are
yes,
such an example, Fatima, of somebody that has gone through, and because I do know the care systems, I do know the impact, to
yeah,
actually come out of a system. And what you said about prison is so spot on, because so many people reenact their unconscious from a place of trapped,
yeah.
no ability to do anything, and feeling completely helpless,
That's
and
right.
let themselves, unfortunately, often lead themselves down a road where they may end up in prison, which
Most,
recreates the trap,
it's,
unable to
yeah.
escape.
Well,
So
children in the care system, unfortunately, as societal problems are, that because they get trapped in this situation, they don't feel the love, or they don't have the guidance. I mean, Auntie Ray was my bright shining star. We need more of those people for our young people, good role models, people that can help them, you know, circumnavigate them through this sticky period within their life. And, you know, often they're feeling neglected, vulnerable, you know, and they lack trust. So, you know, they have detachment issues. So, you know, they often put these walls up around them of security, so they cannot. I mean, for me, I can always remember I feared giving anybody any of my love because I didn't want to be let down, and you know, and be hurt by that. And I say, it doesn't leave you. I mean, I left the care system years ago, but the care system never leaves you. So these things are constantly playing out in life all the time, and it's a question of how you best deal with them. And that's so important, giving children mechanisms and tools to know how to deal with these triggers that happen within their lives. And that's all part of being a human being anyway.
Yeah.
And none of us can be protected from that. You know, that we all have issues, and we all need to know that we need to do that at some stage, take responsibility for ourselves and do the healing work, which is key nowadays, you know, in survival.
Have you had therapy, Fatima? Because I listened to
Yeah.
you, and I'm just a bit blown away by hearing everything that you're saying, even in relation to having to take responsibility. Because yes, our history does affect us. Of course it does. Everybody, you're absolutely right. I'm in agreement with basically every word that you're saying. But I also hear right down to the smell of the perfume once upon a time, how graphically you are capable of creating a complete vision of
Yeah.
you just waiting in that room and seeing somebody behind your clarity and description. You could literally write a storybook from what you're talking about right now, because I can visualize that little girl waiting, that little girl smelling, that little girl tuning into as a
Remembering the
5-year-old.
colours and
Yeah,
Yeah.
the smells, the interactions,
Yeah, the vibration, the energy is always that, you know, those things really. I mean, we didn't have too many people that sat us down to talk and explain things. As I say, back then that didn't happen. So you quickly learn through vibration and energy. I would say that I'm more a spiritualist now. I mean, as a youngster, we used to go to Sunday school, and I used to love Sunday school because it was an opportunity to get out of the children's home and to meet people within the community, and you know, to meet other families too, and be at close proximity with them, because then you understood more about what these other children were experiencing, what the things that we basically didn't get in the children's home, we lacked. We could, you know, if we had friends, and we were fortunate enough, I used to love going around one of my friends' house, Wendy. Her mum was our dinner lady at school. And Wendy's mum always used to say to me, "Do you want some toast and marmalade?" And we'd sit and watch Magic Dougals roundabout with a nice slice of toast and marmalade. That was a real bonus for us.
it is
And also,
always that one person that kind of steps
there was
and really
always somebody there who,
there's,
yeah,
you know, when we look at the system as a whole, and every year, a couple of times a year, the establishment will tell us the successes of the care system. But when you drill down, those successes are because of an individual who's done more than the system. You
well,
know,
yeah,
those shining stars who, to
Care.
use, they care, they actually bring
yeah,
that care. The words you use, they humanize.
humanized, yeah.
And it's
And they
those,
get those children, they get the children, they understand what these children are going through, and they value these kids. These kids feel valued, and that's really what Fatima's UK campaign is all about. It's been giving those children the platform so that they can be seen, heard, and valued, and that's so important for our young people today. You know, we mustn't forget that children who live in the care system feels, even today, still feel stigmatized. there's still the old-fashioned stigmatization of, oh, these kids coming in the care system, they must have done something wrong. Yeah, they're the naughty kids. We don't want these children's homes in our area. I mean, it's sad as it is, and they have to, and this is part of the education process of which I'm trying to do through my campaign, is to educate people that, you know, in communities, and to build better, happier lives, better communities, and a nicer kind of society, because these children have found themselves in the care system through no fault of their own. And it's really important for them to feel a part of the community and embrace them as much, you know, in terms of giving them some time, giving them, you know, some understanding and a little bit of love and guidance. It goes a long way. You would see these children will not just survive, but they'll thrive. And that's the key to it all.
And that really aligns with the framework for positive mental health that we've built around children and those connected. Because it's not just the children that have had that direct experience, but also the families that are connected in the support system within the care environment. You know, you and I have spoken before. You know, I grew up in a home in the 80s where we had 90 plus children go through the house in just over 10 years. You know, it would never be done now. It would never be
No,
allowed.
not now. It's
But
completely different now, isn't it, Dave? You know,
and
when you see children.
That experience, if it wasn't for sport, I mean, you know, this is where our paths kind of parallel up slightly, is that sport was my escape. But if it wasn't for those coaches, if it wasn't for that
The PE
outlet,
teachers,
you know,
they're the most popular in the school, I think, PE teachers and masters. And most kids love sport. I mean, but you'll probably relate to this, that a lot of kids back then, I mean, they were discriminated against. Kids can be quite cruel to one another, really, and they can be bullying. So, I mean, I got an awful lot of that bullying. And through my strength of character, I was the one that ended up sorting out the bullies in the school and protecting the kids in the home, but also the kids that were slightly vulnerable in the schools, you know. And that's what made me a little fighter, you know, because I wouldn't be put down and I wouldn't go under the knuckle, you know. And you know, even if the kids were year 5 and I was the first year, I'd still meet them outside the gate then with bravado. And I'd have to jump up and hit him or something. But yeah,
there's the fight that got you right the way through the sporting career. But your sporting career that people will understand, I am pretty much sure that started on a netball court, if I remember rightly.
Yeah. I mean, sport for me was my saviour, and I'd often find, like a lot of us kids in this care homes, find it really hard to academically concentrate on one's work. So often find myself falling behind, and then again, it's all about the kids taking the mickey out of you or bullying you for that. And so I found my best attribute really within sport, and I normally would come first in most things. And then I started to become team captain of all my team events. And then I would gather my team together for practices because I'd love to want to win against opponents. And I found that I learned a lot about myself in being the team captain and the responsibility that came with that. Self-growth is really important. I think if you can understand yourself more and understand how you react to certain situations and summarize things up, then you know you can become a better human being, a more rounded human being. And I think that I had the ability to do that through the guidance of a couple of people that came into my life who were inspiration, with Auntie Ray, who was a role model to me, and you know, through playing role model as a mum and the responsibility of looking after the children, calling out any injustice that happened within the children's home as well. I'm very much a principles person. I have to laugh really, because even when I watched myself back on the I'm a Celeb, I would call out silly things which most people would laugh about, and say, why would you bother? But the reason why I bother is because I stand by my values and my beliefs, and that's what's always got me through my career as a youngster in growing up. You know, if you haven't got values and beliefs, what have you got in life? And you know, for me, that's so important. You know, and I stand by them throughout my life as I go through each different chapter of my life. And like going back to sport, yes, I mean. I can remember through sport, I was fortunate enough to earn the respect of my peers and my teachers, and I felt much more confident about myself, and I could apply myself better to what I was doing academically as well then, and I started to improve on my academic work as much as I did my sporting career. And I
you
remember
were
being
in that's in certainly within athletics, because yeah, I can remember when I came into the sport, that there was very much that sense of a structure had to be in place on the track, off the track, in the arena, out of the arena. And that's something that I know was built very much from the way you worked when you were in training and competition.
Which psychologically, see, I work very psychologically. I listen, I hear, and I put things together in my own mind. When you hear the level of grief that can go on for a child that's going through loss after loss after loss, even in familiarity of their own environment, being moved from place to place, which is certainly my army background, which is my history, was literally not being born in this country, not being born in my own culture, being moved multiple times, having an alienation certificate, giving up on friendships because I'd make a friend, 6 months later I'd be moved to a new school. So I literally went from one school to another, to another, to another, to another, to another. I can't even remember how many schools I ended up in. 3 schools in this pit in coming just to the UK, because I came here at 11. So I literally was in a junior school for about a month, bullied non-stop because of my accent, coming from an army environment in Germany to the UK, and the discipline of control and structure, when you have no emotional control and structure, actually can be a real, almost addictive.
It's an asset. It's really a lifeline for young people, because, you know, it teaches them life skills. It teaches them a lot of skills, you know, and discipline. And I think that's one of the things most kids in the care system like. They like to know where they stand. They like clear boundaries. They like to know that
consistency of those as well, isn't it, Fatima?
Yes, continuity, which is you know, really important to young people, and you know, continuity and unification, because you know, at the end of the day, we want, most children, all they want is a secure home, a loving, secure existence. And this is why I get so annoyed when they get moved from so many times. They get pulled away from everything they know. They get pushed across the other side of the country, away from their education, which is, you know, again, we all know education in the curriculum is different at different stages in different regions. So not only do they lose all their friendships, their education is affected, and they then have to rebuild themselves and reinvent themselves in another area. And I think that's it's a great, you know, disadvantage to a lot of our young children, because they're already at that stage where they feel neglected and you know, taken disadvantaged in lots of different ways. You know, so for them to have to struggle on that level as well, you know, sport, I think is a wonderful way for them to be grounded, to have routine, and to have discipline. And, you know, and that represents, you know, also skills, life skills, you know, to learn about, to apply oneself, to stickability, you know, organization. You know, it taught me an awful lot, and you know, I'm hugely grateful for that, and for having the ability to see, you know, some of these vital learning curves, you know, and put them into play and action them myself. You know, most people need to understand, you know, when they're given these opportunities to look at them and think, well, they might not all be lovely opportunities, but they're there to teach you something. You can learn something from them. You know, and sport was that for me was a great opportunity to learn, to self-growth, and it's an escapism as well from what was going on in my life. And I remember when I played in the netball team, and it was a very tight match. This is the match when, for me, it will always be something very special. You know, we were playing a team where we were playing for the cup, and the match was quite a close match, actually. It was going 11-11, 12-11, 12-all, and I was getting very vocal, motivating my team. And the whistle went, and the umpire said, "Young lady, keep that noise down." So I kind of, like all kids, thinking, who's that, you know? So off I went again. It was going 12-all, 13-12, 13-all. And I guess nowadays you'd call me myself a motivator, but back then they used to call it a pain in the ass. So the whistle went again, and the umpire said, "Now, I've told you once before, any more of that and you'll be off." And as I turned, I sort of muttered under my voice, and their team captain said, "Fats, no, she's really strict. She'll send you off." So I kind of just, all right, okay. Anyway, at the end of the match, we won. And my friend and I from the children's home, it was the end of the netball season, the beginning of the athletic season. And I remember saying to her, "Look, why don't we go to the local athletic club?" I said, we can go there and enjoy doing some track and field. So we walked 5 miles to the athletic stadium, and I guess we pocketed the bus money at the time, maybe get some sweets or something silly like that. And when we got to the track, my friend Alma, she went off to the sprinters. She saw them in the far corner. And I saw this very tall blonde guy throwing what looked like a spear. And so I walked over toward him. I thought, he's quite interesting. I'll go over there.
It wasn't the spear fan.
No.
Might have been blonde.
And as I went across to the runway, I went to pick up the javelin. He sort of looked, he said, you won't be able to do that. And I sort of questioned him in a feisty way, as all kids do in care system, because you're standing up for your rights all the time. And the shot put coach said, "Oh, no, young lady, you're going to have to wait in the stand," he said, "and wait for the javelin coach to come over." So, of course, I waited in the stand, toe tapping. And then he said, "Oh, here comes the javelin coach." And with that, this sort of mini pulled up really fast in the car park. And as I watched this person come across the infield, I sort of, wow, double take. That's that same woman on the netball court who threatened to throw me off. And it was, I don't know about this. And as she came over to the stadium stairs, Jack introduced us. And before he could say my name, she said, "I know who you are." She said, "You're that young lady on the netball court." She said, "Well, let me tell you now." She said, "Any of that cheek you showed on the netball court, you won't be throwing any javelins here." And of course, I got sort of cut my hands together. I said, "No, I promise I'll behave." Well, of course, she got me from the word "say go," really, because, as I say, I like people that are strong and disciplined. And I like to know where I am. And with it, as the weeks went by, she would say, "Oh, you've got a bit of talent. Why don't you ask Mum and Dad to come up and we can talk about getting you some kit and putting you into a program, a competition program." So I just sort of nodded my head. And then she said to Jack, "Oh," she said, "well, I keep asking, is there something wrong with Fatima's hearing?" So Jack said, "No, why is that?" "Well, I keep asking her every time. I keep saying to her, bring up Mum and Dad, and we can talk about getting you some kit and put you in a competition program. All she does is nod her head." He said, "Don't you know?" He said, "She's from the children's homes, one of those children from the children's homes." So with that, the following week, she came up and she had these pair of boots and she threw them down. She said, "Look, I've had a young girl that's retired." She said, "These boots, probably 2 sizes too big for you, but if you stuff them with paper," she said, "they'll be all right. And here's a javelin." So, well, I kind of was so excited, and nobody had ever given us anything, kids from the home, everything was communal. you know, communal toys that community, that the villagers would provide, you know, to give to you in the children's home, and the clothing also. So you could never really get attached to anything or call it your own, because it was never your own. But this was quite different. So I remember I was thinking, I'd like to get back to the children's home. It was the summer season, and I wanted to take, you know, show the German student who we had that came in the summer season, so the house parents could go off for a holiday. And a lot of the kids that could go home that were short stay or could go home to their parents, they went. And it was just the sort of couple of us that were left there, the long stays. And I remember talking to Ingrid, and I said, Ingrid, come out in the garden. I'll show you how I throw this javelin. So off we went in the garden. And it took me a couple of throws to get it to the end of the garden. And I remember I pulled it out the vegetable patch and sort of discarded the potato off the end of the javelin. And I sort of stepped forward and I said to her, now move out the way. I'm going to give it a really big throw this time. And of course I did. And it went smash through the French windows. And Ingrid standing there with her head in her hands, shaking her head. Oh, you're going to be in trouble. And I said to her, well, what's new? And with that, I said, no, stick it with sellotape. It'll be okay. So Ingrid said, no, you'll still be in trouble. And of course I was. I got a month's ban, which meant that I couldn't go out after school for a month, which no after school activities, which was my sport, which I loved. And of course, I was not allowed to visit Auntie Ray, because on the way home, I'd often call in and have a cup of tea and have a chat with her when she wasn't on duty. And it rather knocked me back quite a bit, because that's quite a long time, a month. And I remember, going into school one day, and a message had got through to me by one of the girls in the opposite team. Oh, Mrs. Whitbread thinks you're bunked off and you're not interested throwing anymore, and you've sold the boots and the javelin. And I thought, oh, I can't have that. So I got up at 2 o'clock one morning and I crept downstairs in the children's home. I went to the front room into the bureau there, and I pulled out in my ignorance what was an airmail envelope. So I started writing on, Dear Mrs. Whitbread, I'm sorry I can't come to the track, only I smashed the French windows and I got a month's ban. I said, but one day I'd like to be the best javelin thrower in the world. And I stuck it down and I put Mrs. Whitbread, St. Chad's School, on the front of the envelope. And I tapped it under my arm. And the next day when we were going out the door, I mean, most of the time when we used to go out, they used to stick a teaspoon of blackstrap molasses in your mouth, and it was foul, absolutely foul. The smell of it made me gag. And I used to walk all the way down the end of the road with that stuck under my tongue, and then I'd spit it out. and anyway, I posted this envelope, and I started waiting, and I waited and I waited as days went by. And then all of a sudden I heard the phone ringing, and I sort of pressed my ear to the glass window from outside, and I heard the house auntie saying, no, she can't come. She's been ever so naughty. She's not allowed out. So Mrs. Whitbread must have been quite persuasive, because within a week I was back at the track throwing again. And I can remember her saying to me, look, she said, how would you like to come and have tea with us one day? And I said, yeah, that would be lovely. And of course, I met Mr. Whitbread, and I met Greg and Kirk, who were 4 and 2, their sons. And it was lovely. I mean, obviously, I was used to having kids around, so I easily amused the children, got on very well with them. And then Mrs. Whitbread said to me, well, she said, this is the summer holiday. She said, would you like to come and stay with us for a couple of weeks through the summer? And then I said, well, yeah, that would be great. So off I went. It was my first experience of what it was like to live with a family, and what the difference was from living in a children's home to living in a family with very few children in it, and much more one-to-one attention. Lovely, routine in the house, and generally, being able to watch the television and have a bit of fun with the children in the garden. And after the 2 weeks that went by, I can remember Greg, the elder boy, who was 4, I mean, he was said to his mum, oh, do we have to take Fatima back to the shop?
There's an essence to that, isn't there?
Yeah, and it was quite surreal, really, because when I was driving back, I was laughing about that, and then by the time we got to children's home, Mrs. Whitbread said to me, she said, "Well, she said we've been thinking," she said, "how would you like it?" She said, "if you came and lived with us." And I kind of sort of froze in my tracks, and I started to think, oh, I'm not sure about that, because when I started thinking about it, I was a bit worried then about leaving, kind of being institutionalized for 14 years in children's homes is a long time. And also my Auntie Ray, because I built a very good rapport with her and the children that wanted, and relied on me to be in there. So it was also really quite a strange feeling of feeling, yeah, this was a chance to get what I've always wanted, and having a family of my own, to leaving the very, very people that, that I had as a family, that, Auntie Ray, the mum that I always wanted, and the children that that I was mum to. So I remember going in the back door, and the house auntie who I never really got on with, and she Mrs. Whitbread explained it to her, and they'd obviously had a conversation prior to that as well. Because she then started saying to me, "Oh, so you're going to be leaving us then, are you?" She said, "And so what are you going to tell Auntie Ray then?" And I kind of like sort of pushed myself in the back of the corner of the kitchen, because it was very, difficult for me to answer the questions, really. I mean, on the one side, I wanted to go because it was a chance of a new life in the family. On the other side, I didn't want to leave Auntie Ray and also the children. And it was a kind of difficult situation to be in. And before I could even ask her any of those questions, Auntie Ray came in. I could hear her click-clopping through the back, and the door opened. And before I could say anything, the house auntie then said, "Oh, well," she said, "has she told you?" She said, "Have you told her? Go and tell Auntie Ray." And I sort of kept quiet. And then Auntie Ray said, "What you got to tell me then, Fats?" And I guess she'd already guessed. She said, "Oh, well," she said, the house auntie, "she's leaving us. She's going to live with the Whitbreads." So I looked at Auntie Ray, and with that, I could see a massive smile come across her face. She said, "Oh, Fats," she said, "come here, give me a hug." She said, "That's all you've ever wanted," she said, "and I can't be happier for you." And, that was an amazing lady right there, knew me and knew how I would be feeling. And within the first few seconds of her coming through the door, she was posed with that question, and she diffused it instantly and made me feel, very special. That that all the years that I'd been wanting a family, now was my time, and she embraced it, and we stayed friends for the rest of my and her life, and unfortunately, she's no longer with us. But she was very special and very, she was a role model to me and my bright shining star. And I think we need more of those for our young children in the care system sector. And funny enough, I've written a book, and it's for 3 to 11-year-olds, and it's going to be published in Christmas by Quarto. It's another opportunity to use as a platform to get the message out there about what our young children go through within the care system sector. And it's called My Bright Shining Star. It talks about my life in the children's home, it talks about Auntie Ray and the great things that she did for us children, and how important it is for our young people to connect with people, and have a role model, and for other people to understand that if they ever want to foster children, what these children go through, and children that read these books, hopefully that those that are in school or through the libraries, they will find what it's like when they see children that come from children's homes or in foster care, what sort of life they go through. It's an educational book, which is a kind book, but at the same time, it's very poignant, and it will hopefully, do a lot of good for our children in the care system sector, and for those that go in the care system sector that who are frightened, they can learn a little bit more about what it is that to expect.
Oh, Fatima, honest to God, I've listened to you, and you echo so much of what I've already experienced in relation to some of the youngsters that I work with. And it's actually, I used to work in an environment called Focus If in Stratford, which is around the corner from the Olympic Stadium.
Yeah,
And that was a program organised by the government, which basically housed 120 youngsters from 15 up to go from care systems, refugees that had lost absolutely everything, you name it, the amount of abuse that they'd gone through, these youngsters, could be absolutely horrific abuse.
yeah,
And then they'd go from dependent living to independent living to moving out of this 120 tower block. And I can honestly say it was one of the worst ideas that was invented, simply because there wasn't the level of care put in to support these youngsters psychologically.
yeah,
And to listen to you, that book that you've written, I would love it everywhere, because I think the more youngsters that don't feel alone, I think when we think about it not happening to somebody else or other people's lack of understanding, I think understanding the psychological impact is incredibly important for youngsters to feel like it's not just them. Because
yes,
I've
exactly. They're not
seen,
isolated. They're not isolated. They're not invisible. They can be seen and heard. And sharing, you know, stories like that is empowering.
Mm.
And I mean, I'm gifting that to children in the care system. The book is gifted, so it will be, you know, for Fatima's UK campaign to help children. But I also am very aware that it's important to get that book out far and wide to a wide audience. So I contacted McDonald's, the CEO from McDonald's, which he kindly responded, and he's been able to connect me with the communications officer for McDonald's UK in the UK and Ireland, and we've been able to bring together, because McDonald's do, I mean, it's a big audience as a family, and they do the Happy Meals, and they're far-reaching, and they do a book books now, and we're looking to put them in the when talking to happy readers, and hopefully get that book in the Happy Meals, so it will get out to 7.5 million. I think they got platform 7.5 million people. So I mean, and also with Quarto, they have tremendous inroads. And I've been talking to people like Isabel Trala, who's a families and head social worker and families. I've been talking to Baroness Farsi, and also people like Yvette Cooper, you know, across party, because big advocate for children, even Nicola Sturgeon, who is involved with, was involved with the launch of The Promise in Scotland. And, you know, this is so important, to bring a collaboration of people together that are all working for the same thing, and that is to improve better outcomes for our young people and young children, you know, in order to get that message out there further afield about everybody, you know, trying to do the best they can, you know, in building happier lives, better communities, and a nicer, kinder society, because that is really what it's all about, because our children are our future. We need to invest in early as we can, in investing in their early days will help them to achieve their goals.
You know what I'd like? I would like you in front of every single social worker in the entire country, mainly because of I know some brilliant social workers. I've met some brilliant social workers, but by God, Fatima, I have met others and had personal experience based on that experience with that youngster that I went through, that shouldn't be anywhere near children for love nor absolute money. And I think you just talking in the way that you have so beautifully and eloquently, and really showing the level of the impact of your own history through your own recall. Your own recall tells the story, and hearing you do that, I honestly think the training should be much more intensive when it comes to social workers and children in care. I did not know until my personal situation took place that there were even solicitors in London that actually act on behalf of children in relation to social services breaking their own laws in relation to children that are going through the care system. And I
Yeah.
had no idea that there were there were solicitors that actually
Specialised in it.
specialised in getting legal aid from the government to challenge an organisation that is being paid by the government in relation to care systems because it's based on money an awful lot of the
Yeah.
time.
Well, I mean, I've worked in the care system sector on and off for years. I mean, I've been this now I see as my ministry, and I've seen so much done. I'm not, afraid to call out any injustice. And also, as one person working as the founder of Fatima's UK campaign, I've been able to use my platform to get into many places to have discussions with ministers on both sides, which is cross party, and to bring people to bear where they need to take a moral and ethical responsibility to do what they should be doing for our young people. But I've got to say, I've also had good support in different areas too. I'm working with the EFL Trust to bring about a collaboration for sports for all for children in the power of sport in my programme for Fatima's UK campaign, and also with West Ham Safeguarding with Joseph Lyons. So it's all the London boroughs as well, so our children can be a part of these programmes. I've also just launched one within the arts, which is the Philip Cutts, the arts and medical programme, which is out there for young people now. If they affiliate, there will be, it's across, nationwide, and if they affiliate, they will be, looked after. It's free of charge. It's an opportunity for these kids to have a safe haven where they can enjoy, because not all children want to do sports. Some are more arty, singing and dancing, and that's great because everyone should have the opportunity to do what it is they like to do. And this is an opportunity for others to see that if we build this construct around these children, they should be safe. They shouldn't be, the teachers, the schools, the carers, the social workers, the local governments, they should really build a construct, a scaffolding around the child, because they need to be able to know how that child's feeling and responding in different places at which it works, and they shouldn't be falling through the net. And society has a lot of problems because of the way it hasn't met the needs of our young people in the care system. There are a lot of them, that end up on homeless. When you look at 33% of our children that go independent living end up homeless. It's far too young for them to be living independently. And most conventional families is 28, and they still have the support of their loving family. They have grandparents, aunties and uncles. We need to develop a bridging gap from 18 to 25-year-olds. I work with the John Lewis Advisory Group, and they've got a wonderful initiative that they've got through their chair, Dame Sharon White, who I work with. And for the first time, we have been able to talk about the summit, which I'm trying to get for 2025 for our care system sector to rejuvenate and to bring collaboration of people together for these programs for our young people, and for the improving the services that we provide for these children. So I think that sits well with what you're talking about, and Sharon has put that on also their agenda, which is wonderful because it's getting recognised and is getting a lot more traction and understanding for the importance of what we can do for our young people, and the responsibility that we have to them.
I couldn't agree with you more.
It really fits, doesn't it? Because APA's mental health support program for that transition is actually tagged as on your marks, ready, set, go. And that whole process is designed to put the psychological building blocks and that support for their positive mental health in that transition into place from 14 all the way through to that exit. And by putting those well-being building blocks in place, it allows for all of that other growth. It's the foundation for all of us, is what's going on here, as you've kind of outlined already.
And it's the importance for me, the secret ingredient for any child is having one adult, just one that
A good role
actually
model.
cares, you know. And often, even in the therapeutic world, you can have all the training in the world, you can have read every single book. And I always say, because I work with supervisees, so I teach other therapists and help and nurture them. And one of the things I've always said to every single one of them, once you're qualified, throw the book away, because the person in front of you has their story. Listen to their words, their thoughts, their feelings, because ultimately it's about hearing the person in front of you. And your story just is so, it actually provokes quite a lot of emotion in hearing the impact, but your history is so, I would see you doing a film, an actual film with the.
Well, there is one in the making, because in the last 6 years I've been working from book to film, because my own autobiography came out back in 1987. And to be fair, I mean, I wasn't ready for that. I was only like just in the family as with the Whitbreads, and which happened to be the best thing that ever happened to me, by the way. For me, it was when I became world champion. The Sun newspaper went to the biological mum with a picture of me in a frame, and they took a photograph of her, and they said, "I want my blood daughter back." Well, I mean, it's a shocking state of affairs, that they should do that. And then I was sort of thrusted into the limelight, obviously, because of my success. And it was told to me by my late husband, actually. He said, "Look, you're going to need to write your life story." He said, "Otherwise, the press will do it, and it won't be very kind." So I ended up having to cope with all the newfound success of being a successful world champion, world record holder, and so on. Well, I was actually won BBC Sports Personality of the Year award that year. I got the MBE from the Queen. And then I was looking forward to the 88 Seoul Olympics. And I was, having to write my life story was not the desirable way to move forward, really, because it brought back a tremendous amount of disturbances for me, emotional disturbances, a lot of trauma. And in trying to put together the book, I mean, it just brought me to a complete breakdown, physical and mental breakdown, which ultimately ended my career, because, I never really recovered from that. In terms of, I was pushing the boundaries physically as well to try and do my training. I wasn't well. The Olympics was on the horizon. And it took 2 years after that, I ruptured my rotator cuff muscle because of that. And pushing those boundaries. And as I say, sport was my savior, and sport ended my career. But in between, as I always tell everybody, the greatest thing of all was the journey. It's never the destination at which you arrive. It's always the journey and the experience that you take from it, and the self-growth. And that is what I look back and say to myself, how grateful I am for having been able to experience all those wonderful things, traveling the world, knowing who I am and working with who I was, learning to work with the media, world's media, as a sporting star, and still remaining the very person who I am, and being able to relate with people and sharing that with, especially nowadays, which is my ministry, with young children in the care system, because it is important that they can see it can be done. They can succeed. They can absolutely break that mold, and they become independent and live and have a loving, wonderful family, of which I'm proud, as a proud mum, and inspired by my son. you know, grateful that I was able to break that mold too, you know, and that was the most important thing for me growing up, to be able to be a mum, you know, and do a good job.
And
No,
not repeat the generational.
Not, that's right. History not repeating itself.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm really grateful for that, and I'm really determined, as I say, Fatima's UK campaign is to do as much as I can to turn the care system around, rejuvenate the care system sector and its community, give them hope as well, and to bring a collaboration of partnerships together to improve our children's outcomes and make a difference to their lives.
Mhm.
So,
honest to God, I am so glad to be sitting here listening to somebody that I have seen throughout from the moment I arrived in England, which was 1976, seeing you on the screen in some way, shape, or form.
yeah.
And you know, I wasn't somebody that was sporty. I was somebody that just caused a lot of trouble for myself as a youngster. But
You know, where did you come? Which part of Germany was you?
I was born in a place called Munster.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Moved from Munster to Menden. I can't remember what order. Menden, Dortmund, Cologne.
Yeah.
I was literally in every barrack.
Yeah.
And
That was tough. You must have had it quite tough, really.
it was tough in the sense of the fact that it was, you know, you made friendships and you lost them. And
Yeah.
as a little child, I remember thinking, and I couldn't have been no more than 5 or 6 or 7 at the time, thinking, I don't want to make any friends anymore, because actually, what's the point? Because I lose them, and I lose them repeatedly. And
Yeah,
actually,
I
it
get
took
that.
therapy and going through my training at 29 to actually have somebody in that training group with me that was determined, no matter what, to be my friend. Now, I was 29 at that point, Fatima.
Yeah.
I could make friends with blokes.
Giving up the ghost.
Yeah, girls were just another problem. I just wouldn't make them anymore. And I'll tell you what, it was that one therapy friend that is still my friend today that dragged me back into having to push myself and challenge myself psychologically to actually create friendships. It took me years to do that. And I did not come from a children's home. I just came from being moved absolutely everywhere all the time.
Yeah, and it's an institutionalized environment. The similarities will be there. I mean, for me, as we kind of bring the conversation to a wrap.
He's raved about you, by the way, Fatima. I'm not gonna lie. I really want you to meet Fatima. So I've had it yakking in my ears for the last, I don't know, 6 months. Yeah.
No, that's all right. That's fine. I'm sorry I couldn't do it any earlier, though. You know, Dave, it's been really it's been a real journey.
It has, and you know, we've talked throughout this process about the campaign, about the work that you're doing, about the stuff that's coming with the book.
Yeah.
You know,
Here it is, look.
Yeah, I love that logo. I really love that.
I designed that.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah,
No one else
I
is going to be.
I do love art. I do. Art is another way for relaxing for me, and I always talk to the kids about this because I love sport, I love art, and I love doing puzzles. And I always find if I'm quite stressed, these things are a way of relaxing and getting a flow state of mind. And flow state of mind is really great because it allows you to be more creative, and it stops you from getting stressed. And you know, there's no hierarchy where that's concerned. You know, everybody has issues in their lives, and you know, it's very real to each and every one of us. Doesn't matter what it is, and I'm very aware of that. And I always say to them, a lot of people speak to me about that because part of obviously with kids that come from care system as well, 27% of them by the age of they're 14, they've got mental health issues. You know, and this is why I talk about healing. We have the responsibility as we get older to ourselves to do the healing work because, you know, that's so key. And part of the healing work for me is journaling, doing things like meditational work, even if it's just to go for a walk with your friend or with the dog. My little dog is on his bed at the moment, and just enjoy being out in nature. Puzzle work, and as I say, artwork. I love art, and these things are relaxing. These are things where you can sort of forget about all the stresses and the strains of everything that's going on, and you can just be you, without all the responsibility of everything else around you.
That connection to self, isn't it?
I'm hearing energy. I'm hearing how you use energy through the sports, through the javelin, if you like. Because even my head was thinking, when you were talking earlier, I was thinking, what a powerful way to symbolize almost needing to champion yourself through the energy of you into a javelin and where you're throwing it.
That's
The
right.
ink and the so I'm really picking up on your ability to go, I can have low peaceful energy with the creative side. I have energetic energy, and it was being channeled into the sport.
All that aggression, all that anger.
Absolutely.
Put it in the tip of the spear and send it down the field.
I mean, often I trained in a shed, in a garage. I mean, I trained 3 times a day, with running and weight training and plyometric work. I used to sprint with Daley Thompson and his group. I used to do, my weights.
Uncle when I was racing.
And Jeff Capes, who used to be Britain's shot put champion, the European champion, and also the Highlands. He used to be a Highland. He used to do all the Highland games. Jeff was like, when I came into the team, he was like my brother, big brother. And he'd look after me, and I'd talk to him about strength work. And I used to train in a little shed in the back of the garden with Mickey. He used to be a boxer who worked with my grandfather, my adoptive mum's dad. So it was all very like, I mean, nowadays you see people working out and they work in the gyms, these big fancy gyms, but it was in the back garden in a shed with a Kayla gas to get back in the 70s. It was really cold. You'll remember it. You used to have a lot worse winters than we have now. And I guess in the 80s, again, 70s and 80s as well, bit of a tailblazer to a certain extent. Women weren't allowed muscles, but I had some muscles, because I worked hard for it. Nowadays, all the girls in the gym, they're looking at their booties and they're sort of lifting their dead weights and they're squatting. And I think, go girl, go girl. But back then, I mean, it was a lot to deal with because, in that era with the East versus West in the Iron countries as well, this little Brit shouldn't have been beating the East Germans, but I was teaching them a trick or two. So, it was a great period of time. I learned such a lot, and then I look back and I take the hand of that young girl that was so badly, felt emotionally traumatized and let down, and not so much let down, but felt abandoned. And I often look at her now and I'll take her by the hand and I say, "You're all right, Fatima. I've got you, mate. You're going to be fine." And I think, that's it. You've got to look back what was. I mean, past traumas sometimes alerts future, problems that may come. And it's about knowing that young girl that used to get frightened or feel, triggered by something. The older Fatima now can tell the younger Fatima it's okay. I've got you.
There you go. Being your own mum. So when I hear you talk like that, it's like me in my therapy space, working with clients to help them learn to love and love for themselves and love for others. Because one of the things that is it's such a cliche terminology, but love for me is the ultimate version of care that we can give anybody. Truth be told, when we learn to give it ourselves without it making us selfish, then actually, isn't that the aim of life? Being able to pass the gift of love to somebody else.
You love yourself, like you would love others. I think it's really important. There's as sentient beings, we all need to be able to connect, and we all need that to feel seen and heard. and obviously loved. And the best thing you can give a child is a safe and secure home, a loving home. You know, that's it's the most important thing. You know, and it represents security, you know, the security of life, you know, and they carry that through their years, and hopefully they'll give that to their children as well, love and security.
And that ripple through positive care, love, well-being, those building blocks can't be taken away once they're in place.
No, I mean, we've got to also think back. This is why another reason why it's so important we bring change now. It's about future generations beyond ours too. And we've got that moral and ethical responsibility to do that for them. I mean, if we...
Exactly why we started APA. APA came out of a very crazy idea of mine, which I'm still wondering if I can do the same one.
Crazy, why don't we? Yeah, that's a good idea, Von. Let's do that.
And but it came, as you well know, it came out of surviving cancer. So I've just come out of my clinical remission in April, and I had colon cancer in 2018. And it gave me a royal kick up my own backside to say, actually, we need better mental health systems in this country. And I want what we have created to be something that creates a change in the world of mental health, that we have more efficient, ethical ways of working, because our passion is making sure that the people that sit in front of therapists and get mental health assistance in any way, shape or form, that it's coming from the right place, the right level of self-awareness, but also with that care. Because too many people utilize the academic side and don't realize there's a heartfelt side. And if you don't have the two, it will never be as good as it could be. So it's it's where our passion lies, in creating change and wanting people to have a better
massive change. We need to make sure that, because we don't want our children being in the criminal sector. We don't want our children committing suicide. We don't want them being homeless. We don't want them to be abused, you know, or end up addictive to things because they can't cope, when they should be you know, like every child has a right to a safe and happy childhood. It's so important.
And it is. It's like you say, the only way this evolution takes place in a way that is sustainable is through the collaboration. And it's all of the component parts, and there are some amazing examples of that work being done, but it's so fragmented across the country. And what Fatima's UK campaign is really doing is magnetizing all of those collaborations, bringing it together, and for APA to support that on the physical side with the sport, with the art, and for the work that we're doing on the mental health. It just makes sense. That climbing frame that you were pulled off of, we're building a new one. We're building the climbing frame for all of those people to actually be able to have that sustainability for themselves for life.
I'm thinking, how can is there anything else that we can do to support you in what you're looking to achieve, Fatima?
Well, I mean, obviously share whenever I share anything. It's always good if you can get it out there. What I'll do now is I'll take a picture and I'll also post this on our socials to say that we've been communicating. And what is it you're actually going to do?
Well, we are going to, well, there's a couple of things that we've got going on. So we have the Rampage collection, which is our community learning platforms, support programs for those that are connected to social care. We have the fashion show is going to start in a second, ladies and gentlemen. Brace yourself.
Shirt out. I don't think it'll be seen, but you could take a picture as well, because you could probably use it at your end if you wanted to blog it.
So we're going to share this conversation out as part of this month's In Conversation With series. We are also hosting an event in March as part of Social Work Week with Social Work England. And that is going to be the launch of our parental support program.
Yeah.
And that's a collaboration support with the Change for Children International.
Yeah.
And that is to support parents as they go through the family court process.
Right.
I don't know. I'm just looking. My phone's over there.
Right.
You go and get your phone and you can take a picture, because I'll do one and you can do one.
Screen grab it from the video.
Yeah.
How's that?
Screen grab, that's it. Screen,
there we go.
You can do this one.
Look, see, look, we'll get the logo on there as well.
Yeah.
But I do want to take a picture of that.
I think you need to do it because it come out better on your end. And if you want to, you can send it to me. You got my mobile number. I'll give it to you.
Yeah, of course I have. Yeah,
well, there you go. Why don't you send it to me and then I'll post it. Send me also, Dave, put together a little paragraph or something and I'll blog it. I'll blog it later on. I'll put it on my socials.
We will get everything pieced together over the next few hours. And Fatima, I want to say a massive thank you. Would you look at this? Look at that phone.
All right, here. Fatima's campaign.
You got it. Look at that. See, the technology is there, ladies and gentlemen. We can do almost anything.
Anything.
Thank
but
you.
Listen, it's really been great to talk to you both.
I am really looking forward to sharing this out and kind of.
If you need to talk to me about anything else, just give me a shout.
Yeah.
I'm with Helen Hayes tomorrow.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
going to talk to her because I saw Yvette Cooper last week, and she advised me to talk to Helen Hayes because I'm trying to put, I've written out some stuff already for the summit because I see as key speakers, as also subgroups to discuss stuff and key things that we talk about, where, it'd be obviously the kids that get made homeless, also the Samaritans we want involved in that, and, lots of different areas. So if you've got anything that you think, right, both of you, that could be as part of the 2-day summit, and also I want to make sure you're there because not everybody's going to get there if we get, it's April 2025.
We
so
will do everything that we can.
Oh, it'd be an absolute pleasure to be there.
Yeah, it'd be lovely to see you. And I would write down a little list of things, a quick little list of stuff what you think could be on there. Because I'm going to talk to Helen Hayes as well, and she'll probably give me a lot of insight to these things too. But I just, it's for the people in the care system sector. It's not just the big organisations and the agencies, because I don't want it lost on what we need in terms of for our people that work, the paid and unpaid workforce on the ground floor level, because it's them who's delivering it. It's them who's got to be able to sustain it. Because a lot of these big organisations, they get huge amounts of monies, and they tend to forget about the rest of us on underneath. If you know what I mean.
I agree.
The other thing,
it's not about them; it's about the rest of us who work day to day in the engine room.
Yep, and this is where anyone who is watching the conversation, if you have contributions that are going to be those diamond and those gold nuggets of suggestions for the evolution within this arena, come forward. Don't sit there in the pub going, I've got a really good idea, but don't do anything with it. Get involved. If you don't get involved,
what collaboration's all about, sharing ideas, and that's really where it's about.
APA, since we started, I think we've got about 34 collaboration partners.
We do.
We're going to be reaching out to all of them. Let's get the conversation flowing. Let's make sure that summit in 2025 is the best that it can be, and kick off that voice in a way that hasn't been done before.
And make sure that voice is always heard.
There you go. Always. It's important that we're all in it together, so we're all looking to do the best we can. So April 2025 is when the summit is hopefully going to be out there for everybody to sort of look to as future reference to what's going to happen to our children's care system.
Fatima,
No.
it has been an absolute bloody pleasure.
Same here.
Whose name, as like I said, you've been someone that has been in the background of my life on the TV throughout most of my childhood once I landed in the UK. And it genuinely is such a privilege to hear your story, because
Yeah.
it resonates with so many clients that I've worked with, and is incredibly powerful for me to hear. The emotions that I felt listening to you were exactly the same kind of emotions I hear with every single person that sits with me and allows me to work with them. So it's an absolute privilege to meet you and to know you. And I am so looking forward to growing and developing our relationship with you in the way that APA can help you in the best ways that we think we know how. And that's having
That's
the
good.
best professionals by your side. And I'm
Lovely.
saying from the psychological point of view with our directory, which they are phenomenal therapists, and they would
Good.
love to hear your story, and they're going to.
They're
now.
going to.
They're
This
going
will
to.
be
Well,
going.
I've got a feeling it won't be the one and only, so I look forward to speaking with you
we are
both again anyway.
And at some point we'll get into the same room, and the laughs will carry on, and I know that for sure.
And by the way, my dog's in the bedroom as well on the bed, because I couldn't.
Yeah. I'm just going to take
him
him out now for a walk.
Yeah.
So look after yourselves, both of you. I love and leave you, and don't forget, send a picture and send a little, what I can, as a teacher to put out there. So I'll put it on my socials. All right.
You are an absolute star.
I'm going to
and
make
we will
sure.
see you soon.
Just one last thing. I'm going to make sure David gives you my mobile number if you need to speak to me for any reason directly.
Yeah.
Because you usually get him, not me, but you can have both of us now, Fatima.
All right, then. That's great. You're a good couple. I can tell that. It's nice to see. It's lovely.
Take
I
care.
love seeing it.
All right.
You take care.
Bye for now.
Bye. Bye. See you later.
It's because he hasn't pressed the end of the video.
There we go. She'll pass out in a second. Off she'll go. There. What a conversation. That was phenomenal. So if you've benefited from any of the experience that we've just been through, by all means, you can get the CPD certificate for it. Just fill out the questionnaire. It'll be attached in the comments and the description of the video.
That was amazing.
It was amazing.
Absolute amazing opportunity.
Every time I speak to Fats, I get goosebumps. She is absolutely amazing, and
a real pleasure.
All the similarities, the connections of experience, it is amazing. So we will see you in another conversation very, very soon.
Take care. Bye-bye.